So it's time for another team preview ahead of this 2021 Overwatch League season, and this is our 5th installment, which means, in alphabetical order, we are now going to be taking a look at the Florida Mayhem. So, Florida Mayhem, they are a team that is not... they're in the rebuild stage, I would say. Like, they were revitalized in 2020. In 2018, in the inaugural season, they finished 2nd from bottom, just ahead of the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons. And then, the year after, in 2019, we saw a revitalized Shanghai, but Florida had stayed put, finishing bottom of the league that season. And Florida decided, Misfits decided, it was enough. It was time for Florida Mayhem to finally put themselves on the map of the Overwatch League, and so in 2020, a new look Mayhem roster came about. And this saw them bounce back big time, finishing 6th in the league, and doing incredibly well. We remember that in the May Melee finals, they lost 4-2 in that final of that tournament to the San Francisco Shock. They did incredibly well last year, off of the back of the pickups like Yaki, BQB doing so well, alongside a really nice tank line, which introduced Gargoyle, which we saw at the end of the 2019 season, and he really flourished in 2020 alongside a brand new support line, which included Gangnam Jin. And Gangnam Jin was a fantastic player they brought in from Runaway as well. Florida Mayhem looked like a different team, along with that new rebranding, and now we're looking at then asking the question, can they continue that going into 2021? And if I was to say anything, I think they really can. So let's take a look at the Florida Mayhem roster. Not a lot is going to change for the Mayhem. Now, the start of this not a lot changing is obviously the backroom staff. So Kuki is still going to be head coach after coming in 2019 alongside Insight and Docs as assistant coaches, and Robert Yip is still going to be the performance coach for the Florida Mayhem as well. They have been bringing on, content creators like Samito and J3, but we know they don't really affect what goes on with the team. They do still have their translators, Swing Chip and MDS. And it's fairly stable, the Florida hierarchy right now, which is always good to see when you want to create a really good team that's going to compete near the top of the league, which Florida Mayhem will be aspiring to do after that 6th place finish last season. So, let's take a look at their roster. Not a lot is going to change, because obviously the Mayhem, massive upwards trajectory after 2020, right? So, all they want to do is maintain that upwards trajectory. If you can start getting better than 6th place, you definitely starting to challenge some real big boys in the league. But in 2021, the league is going to be more competitive, and so teams need to improve to make sure they keep up. That is a big point of 2020. Any teams that have not improved and have stayed at exactly the same level will probably fall down the league because of a lot of other teams improving around them. So, Florida Mayhem, they are holding on to BQB, now their longest serving player. Obviously, a DPS player more on the hit scan last year, did very, very well. Gargoyle on that off-tank role will also be retained. Yaki on that more, Yaki's echo has been insane. I think we can all agree with that. Will be also retained after the 2019 pickup alongside, obviously, Gangnam Jin, who was on a long-term contract. I don't think we expected any of them to go, did we? Yeah, they're obviously going to retain them, but from the old squad, we are seeing them let go of quite a few. So Saya player leaving, he wasn't really taking part last season because of medical issues, and he's now retired, and I believe he's now with Valorant. Chris leaving, the main support they played a lot last season, that's not too much of a surprise. Chris was a big weak link for the Florida Mayhem, and they have certainly upgraded that in 2021. Carrion, the spare tank they had, he's gone out, that's not too much of a surprise. So is Byram. The extra support they had, not too much of a surprise against them, down the roster, cutting costs. But the big change is the main tank. So, they lose Fate. Why did they lose Fate? Because Fate goes over to the Shanghai Dragons to join up with Coach Moon. This is because Shanghai Dragons lost Fearless to Dallas Fuel. So it's kind of a merry-go-round of main tanks that kind of went on, and Fate was the main tank of choice for Shanghai Dragons, and Fate decided to follow that lead. This left an opportunity open at the Florida Mayhem for a main tank to be filled, and we will talk about that in a minute. We are going to talk about the signings, or the onboarders for the Florida Mayhem in their chronological order, shall we say. Now, they were all actually signed on the same day, but we're going to talk about them in order as we do. So Checkmate is the first one we're going to be looking at here. Now, Checkmate is going to be a 3rd DPS player for the Florida Mayhem. Now, this is something they lacked last year because Saya player was inactive. They heavily relied on BQB and Yaki. heavily relied on them. It was to their advantage at most of the points because they did so well, but they definitely need that extra DPS player in case of injury, in case of anything that might happen, and that is going to be Checkmate. Checkmate comes in from OZ Gaming. We've seen a lot of movements into the Overwatch League from OZ Gaming. Another notable one is Skewed into the Los Angeles Gladiators, and also, I believe, Friday into the NYXL. So, OZ Gaming's got something around them, right? And they've impressed, even though they haven't really got a massively great Contenders career record. But the big thing about Checkmate is that he comes from a team called, previous to OZ Gaming, called Bootlicker. And Bootlicker, they took part in Season 1 of Korean Contenders in 2020, and they came out of nowhere. Up Open Test or Open Division in Korea, into Contenders Trials, into Contenders, and they shocked some big teams in Korea. They beat Element Mystic in week 3 of Season 1 to take the title of that week. They were a big team to come out of nowhere. And you don't generally see that happen in Korea. You don't see teams come out of nowhere and all of a sudden start winning even minor parts of Contenders. They tend to just not do anything because there's a big hierarchy in Korea with the likes of Runaway O2 Blast, Element Mystic, etc. And so it's very hard for new up-and-coming teams to break through into that. But Bootlicker did that for the first time in a very long time, and they made big waves in Korea. And they also went on to get 4th in the overall season of Korea in Season 1. And before disbanding and then being basically gobbled up by a load of other teams, players were very much sought after. But that is a nice place to come from when you're talking about Checkmate. He's coming from a roster where he's done well. Now, with the other signings from OZ Gaming, so Skewed and Friday to their respective teams, they don't have that sort of background at a team like Bootlicker. So that's why I am slightly more skeptical about them than I am about Checkmate. Checkmate is a flex DPS player. He's only 19 years old. He's got a good Genji, Tracer, Reaper, Hanzo, and Echo. So he's definitely going to be more alongside the Yaki sort of line. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think BQB is more reliable than Yaki at times. I think Yaki can be massively pop off or he can be quiet. And Checkmate is the person to kind of come in when Yaki's kind of having a quiet day. So I think that's a really big pickup. But I think it's the least of the impactful pickups from the Florida Mayhem, because the next one we're going to talk about is the replacement for Chris. This is Slime. Now, you could not have got much better in terms of an upgrade to Chris. Chris was the biggest weak link on the Florida Mayhem last season. Absolutely massive weak link. And we were wondering, well, what are they going to do? They've got to replace Chris. Chris and Byram, it's not working. It's really not working. And they bring in Slime from the Seoul Dynasty. Previously of Vancouver Titans, and prior to that, Runaway. So, I like this pickup. I like this pickup a heck of a lot. I think Slime finally gets a starting place on a roster, which he has lacked for a long time. He didn't get it full-time sometimes at Seoul Dynasty. Seoul Dynasty, they messed around with their support line or not, and so no one really got to prove themselves, and then they ended up going back to Toby in the end. Slime will be the starting main support for the Florida Mayhem. He will play everything main support required for the Florida Mayhem. So I really like that. And another great thing about Slime is he's got a good Ana. So if they want to play double flex support, then they've got that option with putting Gangnam Jin on the Zenyatta. So I think Slime actually covers a massive amount of holes and comps for the Florida Mayhem. I think it's a massive pickup. And if I was to say, I mean, when we saw Gangnam Jin enter the league, we saw Lee Jae-gong go to Shanghai Dragons, and we saw Gangnam Jin go to Florida Mayhem on it. I was pretty sad about that, because that was one of the big runaway support lineups. Gangnam Jin and Lee Jae-gong. And I wanted the league team to pick them up together, because I thought they were one of the best support duos in the world at the time. And it was sad to see them split up. And I think the only way you could get better than perhaps Slime going alongside Gangnam Jin is if you brought in someone like Lee Jae-gong. And that's obviously not feasible for the Florida Mayhem. They're not going to be able to prize away Lee Jae-gong from the Shanghai Dragons. So I think Slime is going to be a fantastic support. And I think Gangnam Jin alongside Slime puts Florida Mayhem looking like they have one of the best support duos in the league. That is a really good support duo. And I really highly rate Gangnam Jin on the FedEx support. I always have done. So I think that's a really massive pickup for the Florida Mayhem. And it will make them so much better than having Chris and Byram like they did last season. Now the final signing is obviously the replacement at main tank. And this is where things get debatable. So the replacement main tank for Fate is OG. Now, OG has had a mixed time in the Overwatch League, hasn't he? Like, he's been on 2 mixed rosters now, Dallas Fuel and the Los Angeles Gladiators before I came into Dallas Fuel from Gunbox. And, he hasn't had it easy. Dallas Fuel, not an easy team to slot into. I think we already know that. Gladiators, however, that is a fairly easy team to slot into, especially when you've got the likes of Birdring there at the time. Now, he did not have a stellar season. He didn't have an atrocious season, but he didn't have a stellar season. This is the first time we're going to see OG on an all-Korean roster in the Overwatch League. And I am hoping that this is the time he proves himself. This is his last chance. He has got so much talent around him. BQB, Gargoyle, Yaki, Genjin, Checkmate, and Slime. He's got so much quality around him. He couldn't ask for more. So if he can do it with this roster, I really don't think he's going to do it with any roster, and he just needs to be out of the league, as simple as that. Is it a downgrade when it comes to Fate? In terms of consistency, I think it is, yes. But it depends on how OG performs in the season in this new sort of setting he's in. So, OG is a massive question mark. And a brave pickup. What I wanted to see Florida Mayhem do, when I saw the main tank merry-go-round going on, and we saw the Philadelphia Fusion let go of Sado, I thought the Florida Mayhem would pick up Sado. But he ended up going to the Toronto Defiant. And when that happened, I was like, oh, Florida, who are you picking up then? And then they come out with OG, and I'm like, nah, damn, it could have been better. It could have been better. But it doesn't mean this is bad. I think it could work with OG. I just don't know whether it will. It'll be the big thing that Florida Mayhem's season hinges on. They've got no other main tank. If OG fails, Florida Mayhem will most likely fail. They won't fail massively. They've got too much quality to fail massively. But they won't be as good as they could be. However, if OG can find form, really settle in this all-Korean roster, and actually pop off, then is perhaps the sky the limit for this Florida Mayhem roster? Like last time out, we were talking about Dallas Fuel. If OG can pop off, this Mayhem roster could be better than that Dallas Fuel roster quite easily. This could quite easily be a top 5 roster right here. But it hinges on OG performing. And that is a big, big if. And we will have to see whether that works or not. It's going to be an interesting one, but I like the Mayhem. Every single part of the Mayhem I like, apart from that main tank. That is the only question I have about them. And it'll be interesting to see just how much it affects the Mayhem. Now, we'll take a look at their up-and-coming matches, the first 6 matches of the season for the Florida Mayhem. And this is going to be interesting because they kind of ease into the season. They've actually got a pretty nice schedule, the Mayhem. I'm not going to lie. So, the first 6 fixtures, the first game of the season will be against the Atlanta Reign. Now, the Atlanta Reign could be a bit of a banana skin, I suppose, because of the quality of the DPS players on Atlanta. But the tank line and the support line should far outweigh anything Atlanta can ever put out against the Florida Mayhem. So I should expect a Florida Mayhem win here. Then in the second match of this season, they go up against the Vancouver Titans. That again should be a fairly comprehensive win for the Florida Mayhem. Now, for those two matches of the season, the first 2 ones, it is not really out of the realms of possibility that Florida Mayhem could go 3-0 in both of them and be 6-0 in terms of maps when they come into their third match of the season. Now, their third match of the season is a completely different ballgame, because their third match of the season is current champion San Francisco Shock. So, that's difficult. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. That is a difficult one. But it is their most difficult one out of these 6. I mean, I suppose you kind of expect that because they are the champions, but it is by far the most difficult. The rest of them are all teams that were in the lower half of the league last season. So that'll be a teller for Florida, quite how powerful they can be. And it'll be, again, dependent on whether OG can keep up with someone like Smurf, which, again, not a lot of people will think he will. And this is not about being better, this is about keeping up and not being completely and utterly outplayed. If he can do that, then it'll be interesting. But then you've got, in the fourth match of the season, Paris. That should be a win. That should be a win, although Paris could cause them a few issues. Then they got London in the fifth match. Again, it should be a win, although London could cause them a few headaches. It could take a map or two, but it should be a win for Florida. And then they have the Houston Outlaws. Again, a team heavily reliant, I think, on its DPS players, just like Atlanta. And again, the other parts of the Florida Mayhem should see out wins. So Florida Mayhem are a really well-rounded team. And that's what's putting them into the top half of the league. When you look in the bottom half of the league, in power rankings a lot of the time, you're looking at teams and they look imbalanced. When you look at the Atlanta Reign, they look imbalanced in favour of their DPS. The same with the Houston Outlaws. So it's weird, right? Same with Paris Eternal as well. They're heavily reliant on DPS pop-off because their DPS players look so much better than the rest of the team. That is not a problem that the Florida Mayhem have. And that's why I think they're going to be a very consistent team. And I think they could be consistently good this season. I would not be against putting the Florida Mayhem in top 5 of the league in power rankings, because I think they are a darn good team. Like, I really rate the Mayhem. And for me, they are I mean, if the fuel thing works this season and they maintain that roster, then I could see Dallas Fuel going down a similar route to the Florida Mayhem. But the Mayhem are a concept that I like. They've got a lot of good players. They're knitting something really good together. I really, really like the roster. Can they really push the boundaries? Can they really be what Philadelphia Fusion were in that league last year in the West region? Now Philadelphia Fusion obviously in the East region, but the challengers to the shock, who are they going to be this season? Now that we've seen that Philadelphia Fusion have moved out of the region and stuff like that, who are going to challenge the shock in NA? Is it going to be Dallas? Is it going to be another team? Is it going to be someone like Toronto? Or will we see the Florida Mayhem step up? They had glints of it last year, being able to challenge the shock. Is this year going to be the increased, should we say, improvement of that? And then they're going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the shock because they have more stable main support, more variety in the DPS region, and then hopefully a main tank that can match what Fate was doing for them, if not outdo it. It all hinges on OG at the Mayhem, in my opinion, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that's going to be it for the Florida Mayhem. It's going to be interesting because we are moving back over to East region in the next two videos because we've got the Battle of the Zhous. So we've got Hangzhou and Guangzhou coming up, and then we'll be back to NA when we go to Houston and we go to London. So it's going to be super interesting to take a look at the Zhous because they've got some really pretty stacked rosters, especially Hangzhou. They've got a lot of interesting people to talk about. But I will be leaving it here for this one. All the socials are linked in the video description as per usual to Illusion and my stuff as well. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then!